anyone else approach you about podcasting?
No one is interested in my opinion.
Would you have left me the moment someone did? You're only here because I'm the only one who asked. You're like, well, if all I needed was one person to whistle podcast at me.
I settled.
You said, I don't think you had a choice.
Exactly.
Neither did I. Hello, Needle Movers, and welcome to a new episode of the Needle Movers podcast, a podcast that brings to you the books, lessons, and concepts we wish we had known earlier on in our lives. As always, today with you, we have myself, Mark Jasons, and my co-host,
Valerio Tommaso. You always seem to forget your name.
It's the hardest part in the intro is for me to say my own name.
Do you know why I got my tablet from me now?
Why is that?
Because I wrote like Mark Jasons. I'm going to turn it around.
I have it. I should have it on me.
I'm going to prompt you for your name.
If you're listening today, we've got a special episode, and we're going to bring you 3 very useful topics, I guess, on starting a podcast. You know what they are. Well, of course you do. You're the one who wrote the script. So, topic number 1 is the importance of taking action. Number 2 is building 10,000 hours. So, the road to becoming outliers. As you know, in our previous podcast episodes, we've already discussed the rule of 10,000 hours. And then we ourselves have been secretly, or obviously, utilizing them. And then finally, the third topic is the mental challenge we face in investing hours and effort without immediate returns. It's that long-winded process.
Very long-winded. Mm-hmm. So it was probably a good about 2 years ago when you first came to me and you said, well, let's start the podcast. That was a terrible idea.
What do you mean? We're committed now. It's too late.
But I think it's fair to say because of the pandemic and because of everything that has happened in the last couple of years, there's been a huge hike in the number of podcasts that are being produced all across the world. So I got some stats here. I think between 2021 and 2022, I think there has been an increment of about 50% in the number of new podcasts that were introduced.
So it's doubled, basically.
It almost doubled, yeah. So there was already an increasing trend, but like the trend has become even higher. So we launched ours in October 2021, which is all, great. And it's fair to say it's been a long time coming because we always wanted to do something which, we read so many different types of books and we were amazed by some of the concepts that we covered. And we're like, I really wish that I could impart this knowledge on someone else.
Yeah.
And, that's why I say it's a long time coming in a way. So when Mark came with the idea, I thought, why not? Let's give it a try. And Mark is probably smiling right now because we sometimes go to all-you-can-eat buffet and the guy comes around with some food. And my reply is not yes or not or no. My reply is, why not? But having recorded 64 episodes
probably
up until now.
Because we don't release them all immediately. Yeah.
That's true, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fair to say that I didn't quite know what I was getting myself into, both from a production perspective as well as a topic perspective. And I guess in a way, building this so-called business, which is not registered yet.
Don't say that. That was still the name. We'll have to buy up our own audience. We're registering. By the time this comes out,
we're registering.
Exactly.
But as Mark said, there is 3 key topics. The first one is taking action. The second one is the 10,000 hours. And the third one is the mental challenge that comes with taking action. Because it's like this huge amount of friction that you have in your head, because you're having to do something which is against your nature.
It is a bite back. Well, quick question. What's against our nature? The whole process of podcasting or which part?
So I think for me, the biggest part, and I think I mentioned this before, is the whole putting your ideas out there.
Yeah.
And what will people think?
Oh, yeah.
What will your colleagues think? What will your friends think? And now I don't just give a shit anymore.
I think this is the first episode we've sworn on. That's how much it's... But no, it's...
We're face to face. I'm inspired.
But it's true. I guess because that's one of the most frequent pushbacks. Even if I ask for a guest on the show or something, they're like, yeah, but I don't even believe what I'm saying. I don't know what other people will take my opinion to be. So it's kind of that difference. Yeah, I guess that is true. One thing and maybe you've got this here, but one thing I remember though is part of my pitch was the fact of all the things we'd have to learn along the way would be useful. And they have come to be much more useful and much more frequent, to the point that we're at a podcast where we're talking about how to do what we do, which is, I think, is a good... It shows good progress.
And I think in a way is, yes, we do podcasting, but I think the three key concepts we're talking about today, it's so relevant for anything. It's relevant for learning a new skill.
Yep.
It's relevant for mastering it. It's relevant for any other kind of business.
Of starting something, of just commencing, getting things done. I think it's just true. So we're utilizing it in a fashion of like, it's very meta. We're in a podcast talking about making a podcast. But yeah, it's beyond that. And that's why we brought it here. That's why it's a good topic to raise, I think, right?
And I think because of people have opinions about anything, you could be starting a coffee shop or you could be starting, a management consultancy, and suddenly people will have an opinion and they will come crawling from all sides of your apartment saying, yeah, are you sure it's a good idea? I've read this article on the BBC. I was like, shut up. Shut up. Nobody wants to know.
Yeah. Keep it to yourself unless it's fruitful or useful, basically.
Anyway, let's go on to the main topic now. So, I know that before you came to me, there have been others.
I don't like
There have been others. How many times have you had this conversation of, oh, let's start a podcast?
The conversation, I honestly lost count. The amount of people I was like, because I know that it might have doubled in, since 2020, you said?
Yeah.
But at least since minimum 2008 or something, these like podcasts have been a thing going. And I was interested, but I never really cared until like maybe 2013, 14, maybe 2015. And that's when I was like, why don't we just record our conversations? Like I find them interesting enough that I'll listen to it. Maybe someone else will. And I've talked to, seriously, maybe 5. Maybe a pinch more than 5 people. I don't recall. But I was like, yeah, we should start a podcast. I've done that a number of times, yeah.
And we've actually recorded, but that wasn't your first, was I?
No. Why are you laughing so much?
Because of the context of I wasn't your first.
Hey man, I had to make sure I had other people's cherries ready, and then I bring you in. But it wasn't that. I don't know what the time is. We were always doing something. There wasn't a time we weren't working on something. But yeah, I had recorded with at least 2 others, and this is where I made all my mistakes. Well, I still made some of ours, but I at least got to manage to see the requirements, I guess, of making something fruitful. And it wasn't that they were bad, it was just that you find challenges, I guess, or things that people might not want to share, and you learn things like, hey, you have to make a theme, and just, practices that you need to impart, which is funny because even while we were making this one, I had a couple, I guess, that was running at the same time, and I saw like mistakes we'd make in this one that I'd be able to take there and be like, by the way, we shouldn't do that. Check your audio. Or in fact, I'm saying this now. I'm probably going to check my audio and see how it is. But yeah.
Which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess going from there, I'm assuming, I don't actually know. I'm assuming that this is the only podcast that you've got going, right?
No. This is the only, So I had at least 2 where I actually recorded a number of episodes that no one will ever hear. And they were on different topics. So they were unreleased for different reasons. But no, this is the only one that has been consistent. And it's, I guess, a perfect storm of like criteria and life circumstances that allow for this. I say life circumstances. We get in the middle of the busiest times, but we still manage to maintain. I think I remember when we started this, I was like, let's just do it. Releasing it's up to us.
Yeah.
But as long as we make sure we build up that habit, and then I think we chose to release it regardless. So we gave ourselves deadlines and stuff to do. And I guess that helped out. And especially when we realized releasing it is a good part of making sure that we hold ourselves to account. Because if we didn't, then we just have I've done that with the others where we'll just make it. Let's see. And we made it. And don't worry about where they are or what they sound like. They're gone forever. Yeah, but this is the only one that is actively ongoing. I don't have plans to make it.
Thank God I never asked that question before. That would have been awkward. I was like, I've got like 3 other shows.
Have you been listening? You should be regular. No. This is my only... Has anyone ever else approached you about podcasting?
No one is interested in my opinion.
Would you have left me the moment someone did? You're only here because I'm the only one who asked. You're like, well, all I needed was one person to whistle podcast at me.
I settled.
You settled. I don't think you had a choice.
Exactly.
Neither did I.
But jokes aside, I think it's really easy when you're starting something like a podcast or a business or any kind of venture really to kind of lose yourself in the detail of making things perfect.
Yeah.
You don't want to release X episode because you don't feel like the audio is perfect. You don't feel like the images are perfect. Maybe the script wasn't great. And I think this kind of all falls in the rabbit of inaction. And because there is so much inaction, you're losing the opportunity to actually better yourself. Because it's only once you release things that you're like, oh, actually, that was really crap.
Yeah.
And I remember when we first started, oh God, like you would message me and you would tell me, oh, is there any parts of the podcast you didn't like? So that I can go back and delete the section. And I would go through the podcast, let's call it the raw recording. And I would basically go like, okay, between 1 minute and 5 seconds and 1 minute and 15 seconds, get rid of all of that. Then go to achievements. And this poor guy would basically edit for hours upon hours trying to get the audio to perfect. And it wasn't because, we need the practice.
Yeah. But it was also the learning step because I mentioned this in previous episodes, we would over edit because we were just unhappy regardless of what it sounded like. If I said, if I did that fumble just then that you would have heard, it would be out. You've heard the intro to this one. I no longer care. I don't mind anything that makes us laugh and stay in. And I think when I was thinking about it, about how with others where it was record it and just put it out, and the putting it out is such a big barrier. But I think there's so many barriers you put on yourself. It's like every excuse you do before you start an action is just adding a brick to a wall of inactivity, like you said. So you're not going to move. You're not going to get past it because every time you've already set up yourself to be like, yeah, but what if no one likes my voice? What if I don't like my voice? What about them seeing me? Or all of these reasons, and you're just putting up bricks and no one else is stopping you. It's literally you yourself putting a big barrier there saying, I don't know my opinion. And it's kind of, I get this. I get that in this day and age, there is the fact that things tend to live forever. Like it doesn't, you delete it, it doesn't delete. And now there's cancel culture as well. So people tend to be like, find something you said when you were 5. Like this baby said goo goo gaga, but he said it to the wrong person. And so there is nerves there. But I think it's like you can either live in fear, be very risk averse, or you can just get things out there and start it off and then move forward. But I guess we're kind of good because we put ourselves in a place of learning. So even if we did make mistakes, we're welcoming as ever to get that feedback and at least update it. And we have made many a mistake, at least in the making of a podcast thing. And I think that's where we grew from. That's where we've grown from. Like we're visual now, right? And the first visual wasn't like this.
Oh, no, it wasn't. I mean, if you look around the room right now, I can count about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 6 and 7, 8 stands, 2 lights, 2 microphones, 3 cameras, Yeah. But we didn't just buy all of this equipment and like put it in a room and expect ourselves to be perfect. We just make the mistakes along the way. And I think what we need to be honest with, I guess, is that for the longest time, you did come to me, you did tell me, okay, let's do a podcast. I was like, great, let's do it. But we probably delayed it for quite a while.
Yeah.
And it was delayed because of the fear of, getting things wrong, not doing things right. And, what would other people say, as I mentioned earlier, which is very similar to what anyone would think with something new.
Yeah.
Speak up in a meeting for the first time. Or what will other people think? Will they think I'm stupid because I'm asking a question which is too basic? Or going to a new company. Oh, will people think that I'm an imposter? And then you start having imposter syndrome. And the problem is that if you don't put out there, as I've mentioned earlier, you miss out on the opportunity of learning. Because, it will come with mistakes. You will screw things up, but that's all part of building the skill and putting yourself outside of the comfort zone.
Very true. I also think part of the inaction is about, like, you might be, like we just mentioned how much equipment we're using, but the fact is it wasn't necessary, at least at the starting point. Maybe it is if you have this level that is required, like if you're a professional thing, but if that's a blocker, what was it I'd always say? It's quality rather than, and it's like the quality of our content basically is key. Not the quality of the audio, not the quality of the cameras, because people might zone out regardless of what we do. No matter, they'll be like, wait, why isn't this 4K? Why isn't this 8K? Why isn't this, And it's like...
Why isn't it 3D?
Yeah. And if you go back and listen, I don't think it's the first or second episode because I accidentally deleted those. But it's like the third or fourth episode. There's one which you can hear us recording through like the microphone was not great. It was bad. And it was worse than that beforehand, right? And the thing there was... that can stop you. You could be like, I can't start until I get this Blue Yeti microphone or a better microphone. Or you can. It's not a good enough reason. I can't. Because just yesterday I was showing you people who record on their phones.
Yeah.
Like literally the audio on their phones. And there's so much technology out now that can help you not need even budget, let alone expensive equipment. You can utilize what you have to at least kill the reasons for why you shouldn't start. I've seen a lot of people become prisoners to their blockers that they've done that stops them making any action in something they really want to do.
So I think first lesson to take away, don't fall trap of your own fear.
Yes. Yeah, very true. Keep in mind that, find out who's blocking you. And if you find out it's yourself, make a decision, I think, at that point. There are some things that are genuine fears, and a lot of it isn't really, like, genuine. It's just, like, what's the worst that can actually happen? Like, even if someone says a horrible comment.
So what?
Me and him always say horrible comments.
Watch after this.
I am not listening.
Watch after this episode. There's gonna be like tons of people, right? You get a sack.
I've been waiting to see you so I can say this correctly. But no, I think it's true. Yeah, don't let fear control you. Don't let it stop your action. I think it's a big factor to it.
Topic 2.
Let's do it. So we know at the onset of start of the podcast, it can seem, I guess, pretty easy and fun. Like, okay, what do I need?
It's exciting.
Yeah. I need certain equipment, maybe. Oh, I just need a budget, $100 or whatever, microphone, and I've got a camera that's decent enough, maybe my phone or something, and you get into it. And then you get to the editing point and you hear yourself. Or you see yourself, and you're like, I sound like that.
And I remember asking you, is that a 2X already? No, it was a 1X. I was speaking 20 miles an hour.
And then I know, I'm not going to lie, even now, I still practice on, okay, I need to change my cadence. Especially since I tend to myself listen to things at 2X. Or the only time I hear our podcast at like 1x speed is when I'm editing. And then I'm like, 1.5. Listen, I don't even sound like that. But I think it's that word right there. So you can get very particular, and you need a lot of practice to then be like, I need to eliminate that. So beforehand, it was a lot of going into whatever software you use to edit the audio and just finding every occurrence. What was the word that you hated the most of saying?
Let me think about this. Actually.
Yeah.
Absolutely hated it. And I'm consciously trying not to use it. I know that I use it, but on the first episode, I think I counted. I used that word about 6 times.
So you can find, it feels like nitpicking, or it can feel like it's not, but you can find things that just need improvement, things that will, and it might be the audio, it might be the visuals. Be like, oh, that leaf is getting in my way. We've done let's delete and re-record the whole thing. And it's not really the big things. It's like, oh, why is that camera in the way or something like that? These factors that come in, and the only way to improve, in a sense, is to just continue, basically, with time. So the fact that you stop yourself, the fact that you've done one episode or you've done one recording and say, oh, it's not great, but you didn't do 20, you didn't do, we got to 50 and we're still learning. It's not like our journey's over. And that's where you put in the hours. It's really about taking the time and investing, finding these things that you might dislike. But to me, of course, there's self-improvement and there's the intrinsic factors, but there's also the external factors. And that's where it comes to, I remember when I think one of us came to the other and was just like, let's stop cutting these out because I care for what the audience says. And right now, that's not a blocker to the audience.
And right now, we've got like 3 listeners. So.
But it really is. The more you put into the podcast, the more you can get out. That's the bigger return. That's where you can learn more. That's where you can build more. That's where you can start saying, actually, clean. In fact, even bigger, Fiverr. We started and there was lack of confidence in how would we clean audio? How would we do anything? And so, of course, you can teach, but then, like, how would I even manage my time? I need to make sure I have time for this. And it seems like it'll take a long time to get over that hurdle. So the way we started was I went to Fiverr and said, clean this audio up. And then I was still unhappy. I was still unhappy with multiple things. And that's where I could see the lessons on what they'd be doing, take them in for myself.
And it's a blessing in a way, because I think a lot of creators, they will say, you want to save time and you want to try and delegate as much as possible. Mm-hmm. I don't fully agree with that in some way, because then you miss out on the learning opportunity.
Yeah,
you miss out on that opportunity to figure out what you're doing which isn't right and what you can do to rectify, because ultimately that's what makes the content quality good in the long term. Whereas if you delegate right away, yes, it does free up a lot of time, great. But at the same time, you're never going to learn where you're going wrong. If you're never re-listening, if you're never figuring out, maybe the microphone setup isn't great. Maybe you keep hitting the microphone and that's the reason why the audio is all over the place.
Yeah.
Then those are really other things that you miss out on. And it's the same thing when it comes to your career. You know, you might detest to try and maybe influence other people or try to convince people to support your project or whatnot. But if you don't go through the pain of figuring out how to win someone over, you miss out on the opportunity of building a skill. And there is only so much you can do by reading books. If you don't put that skill into practice, put yourself outside of the comfort zone, that skill is not going to come natural to you.
Very true. It's that, yeah, I think you said it very well there. It's that action. It's the activity of doing it. You can do a lot of theory. Funny enough, earlier today I was talking about being an engineer and how we did certain small limited practicals, and then there was a lot of theory, and it could really put someone off. But it's you might be an expert when it comes to theory, and then you have to put it in practice to learn from it. And a lot of the learning we did, so with the audio where it was first out on Fiverr, and for reasons of where it was, okay, let me see how long it would take me. I was like, let me find the experiment, learn from that, and say, okay, I learned more and more and more, and then we were like, how about video? More and more and more, and it's like a snowball effect of growing skills and building up our interest to then be able to, I guess, teach it. Now we're having people who want to start podcasts, and we're able to help them with it. We're able to do episodes on it. We're able to still grow all the time, but at least come from a point of understanding. And because we knowledge share it, it kind of helps out. But it is getting that practice in to build up the hours to then be able to do that. I don't think we'd be comfortable still, like you said, to get the intricacies. It's not things that we can't do. Now we choose not to do certain things. Now we choose to do certain things. And it was a limiting factor, which especially if you're coming and starting one, can be costly. Going and just starting on Fiverr, making zero and being like, let me get myself to the happy minus.
But also you don't know what you're asking for, right?
Yeah.
So we recently started doing some proper videoing now. So, you know, light setting, 3 cameras, etc. I mean, it's nothing fancy, but at the same time, it can be quite overwhelming to try and figure out how to do the video editing. So I could quite easily give it to someone else to do it. But what do I ask them to do?
Because you don't know what you're asking for.
Because you don't know what you're asking for. You don't know you don't even know that you got the options of putting text up, putting graphics up. And if you don't know the basics and you don't know what to ask for, you're just flushing money down the toilet in a way.
Very true. I think, yeah, it really is. Once you learn what you should be looking for, it helps. Once we said this before, you sometimes don't know what language you're supposed to be speaking, right? And then once you're doing it, you're like, that's called clipping. Oh, noise reduction. Okay, amplification. Well, just basic phrases that once you're doing it, it's nothing. But beforehand, you're just like, why is the volume too high?
You just for a second, you sounded like the workplace acronym center. Amplification.
These are basic, the super basic, but it is the things that you can't communicate. So then instead you're like, there's that clicking noise. What is that? You know what I mean? Oh, there's a buzzing in the background and stuff. And it's just really simple things that people can overcharge you for. But then once you build up the skills acumen, and also I think the biggest help is then how we record. Because you knowing how it is to edit things makes you record in a certain way that avoids those things going into the audio. Therefore making you better at presenting, better at recording, better at being able to give input. And I think without doing, you don't find out how to do that, I guess.
So topic 3, it's all about something that we discussed already briefly, but it's about getting over the mental challenge and getting things started, which is all well and good, but this is about when you're getting things started and you don't have a return on investment.
Yeah.
And I think that's very much the case for podcasts. I mean, again, looking at some numbers, there is currently 3 million podcasts with 21 million episodes that were released in 2022.
Last year, there was 21 million episodes.
And bear in mind that doesn't even take into account the fact that the episodes of podcasts which are currently not live are not being counted. So there is a backlog of even more.
Oh, I just explained how I recorded how many with my friends before releasing it a year. These are the ones that make it.
Those are the pre-release. Then there is the ones that make it, but the podcast is not active yet. And then there is the ones where the podcast is active.
So
and
this is just the ones that everyone's able to listen
honestly,
to.
like the tip of the iceberg.
Jesus Christ.
There is a lot. And the return on investment is not obvious.
Yeah.
So you release things, you get better, which is great. We will feel good. I think we enjoy the activity. That's why we still do it.
Yeah.
Watch it. This been the last episode. However, there isn't a lot of returns. Yes, maybe you get some extrinsic, maybe the number of listeners has been increasing. I think now we got probably about 130 listeners or so, downloads. But that's taken 60 episodes. That's like over a year of podcasting, putting in maybe 5 to 10 hours a week, so on and so forth. So it could be really easy for anyone, maybe on episode 20, to say, I don't want to do this anymore.
I think it can be so obvious, but then only when you're in the middle of it and you see it and you're like, oh no, it's a grind. And it's peaks and troughs, because there'll be weeks and be like, why is it spiking? Who's giving them all these? Did you post something? No, it's not even me. And it's that variation, I guess. It's that painful factor, and you have to stick it out, I guess. Well, clearly, because saying that, how many 21 million podcasts YouTube? And then looking at some stats, even though it takes a very long time, only 75% of the highest earning podcasts have more than 100 episodes. So I'm so confused. Of the highest earning ones, they don't, and so that's around 2 to 3 years worth of grinding to get to the point where you're able to. And I think this is the overnight success theory again, where it comes to certain YouTubers, and most of them, part of their story is that they had something before, cancelled, and then they continued and made something else. And it's like, usually you hear, oh, I was there for their previous thing, the thing that no one even knows about. And it's, so that's saying 100 episodes of the one that actually makes it to public, but the one that actually blows up. But it does take a long, I guess, period of grinding, a long period of making sure you're making the content. And who knows how many episodes they delete.
Yeah, I mean, I always think back to the first episode I listened to was Startup, the one from Gimlet Media.
Yes.
And I think the guy's name is Alex Bloomberg, if I remember correctly. Yes. And he seemed like an overnight success, but he wasn't an overnight success.
He was on This American Life.
He was on This American Life, and that's a huge podcast. People knew him already, but he had done, I think, 20 years of that grinding before he decided to start his own venture. So there is no overnight successes. And certainly the return on investment is abysmal. Yeah,
I think there's not a lot of people willing to make that sacrifice or give that time in. Therefore, there's not a lot of success in general. That's why there can be so many, because everyone can start one. It's really super cheap and easy to make a podcast and get it uploaded. Even if you want it to be as frugal as can be, the fact you're able to talk to someone means you're able to record something, and that's enough to make a podcast. But then it's the ones who continue, because everyone likes an underdog story. So there could be the people who've done it, started with no equipment, whatever, recording into their parents' microphone or whatever, and then built up because they had the good content. But they also had that consistency / determination to make sure that they did not stop, even though there was the push or knowing. And thinking about it, in terms of when you think of the MBAs, what is this? It's a red ocean. It's 100% a red ocean. However, there are so many niches within this red ocean. Like, the reason we made this one is because we didn't find this one, right? We like books. Who's talking about all the concepts in books? There's things that provide you books like short summaries, which is what we kind of do, but we take the reality out of them and say, well, how do you extrapolate this to other circumstances? How do we use this? How do we and that's where it's like, okay, there should be something for everyone, but there's not yet. So it shouldn't be a barrier to entry. It's really down to who's going to keep it going. And that's where, I guess, for us, enjoying it is a really key thing.
Absolutely. Especially where you don't see, I guess, what comes back to you and you're thinking, why am I doing this? As long as you enjoy it and you get something of it intrinsically, then you're good to go. And the same barriers to entry here can be true of any venture. Like, you don't know how long it will take. You might not get fruits to your labor. There is a risk there. There are so many factors you have to consider. So it might be it podcasting, be it starting your own company, be it going to a different job, and you're like, what will this give me in value? I'm going to put in time, effort, money, whatever, and what will I get back out of it? And there is that, I guess, ambiguity that you will have to face, but it's down to who can stick. And I wouldn't say in certain jobs it's about sticking out, but it's there for knowing your path and saying this is the way. And a lot of people don't make or muster it, I guess, and that's that difference. That differentiating factor. Funnily enough, it's weird to think that it would take at least a year and a half more of us before we're even in the stage of getting to 100 episodes. But yeah, as of this moment, I think we're in a good progression status, right?
the build up is truly there. But I think, yeah, it's that one, you have to start to get any form of momentum. And if you don't start, the inactivity kills you. 2, you have to keep going, and that gives you the practice. But 3, you have to then make sure that's consistency. And for instance, we release on a Wednesday. Like, the only time you might not hear an episode will be
Christmas.
Yeah. And it's not like we weren't sick during the year. You might hear episodes where like, are they sniffling? And meanwhile, we're in hospital beds like, yeah, in this episode, we're going to talk about Dr. Boy. It's a different type. And I think that's the key thing. It's where you bring that consistency factor in, and it makes a huge difference as well.
It was, you talked about, walls that are in the way. I think I heard a quote once that said that the walls and the barriers that you find along the journey, they're not for you, but they are to keep others at bay.
That's a good shot. I've not heard that before. It's rare.
Can't remember where I heard it from.
I think I made it. I think it's my quote. I think I'm taking it. Remember this episode as me being the one who said that. It's for others to get. That's a very egotistical mindset, but I like it too.
But having said that, I mean, we spoke about how challenging it is, I guess, to get your head around, what you're doing without having that return on investment. And I think it's really similar to starting a venture in a way. And what I found myself reflecting on when I was putting this episode together is that in a job, in some ways simpler, because you have a job, and regardless of what you do, regardless of how you perform, you will get a salary.
Yeah.
You will get sort of that extrinsic reward coming back to you. And if you do a good job, you might even get your manager that comes around, gives you a pat on the back. And again, you get that feedback saying that, you're in the right direction. And that's the thing, right? You've got the direction. And there is the more challenging jobs, perhaps, when you've got more ambiguity.
Yeah.
So they are more difficult to navigate. However, you still get a lot of mentoring and it's easy to access. And when you have a venture, that can become a lot more challenging, because not only you haven't got the direction that tells you which way to navigate, but also finding that mentor that can help you can be challenging. Mm-hmm. And also finding what things you should be doing next is an unknown. And then you come to this point where you're trying to figure out whether you're doing well or not, and you haven't got that immediate feedback from the clients. You haven't got the reward that comes in. So there is very, very large differences between having a job and starting a venture. But I think that the element of ambiguity and the lack of reward that comes with it, mm-hmm. that's what really can be a struggle to keep going and keep putting in the hours and keep putting in the effort to either keep the business running or putting the episodes out there.
I agree with that, analogy, because it's true. If you have a manager who leaves you in an ambiguous status, it can be a very frustrating period, because you're like, am I even doing good? Is it bad? Am I bad at my job? And then here you typically have to start from a point of ambiguity, and you have to earn your way through just teething, through pivoting, through exercising it, through actually being continuous in it, to get an audience who can tell you, by the way, this isn't good. And that's funny, because you hear about people who are mildly successful or very successful who would get critiqued a lot at the start, and they looked past the comments to the factors of what they're keenly saying, and they're like, oh, they're saying, like, some people just can't help but call you idiot, but they'll be like, you're an idiot, you should have this set to this standard. So they're like, I should have this set to this standard, and they took it and they just kept building on it. So then those bottles or whatever's thrown at them, it becomes steps, ladders to their success. And I think that's a thing they had to fight for. They had to start from somewhere, but then they refused to give up. And it's funny, because if you think of comedians, what do comedians do? If someone goes up to them and asks them, oh, am I good? Am I going to be great? They'll tell them they're rubbish, because only the people who can withstand the fact that they will be told, if you need basically someone else's approval to tell you you're going to be whatever, then you're most likely not going to be standing the time, because comedians get, they bomb. And they still go back out. You know what I mean? They make bad and they still go back out. Same with musicians. Some of them have off days and they still go back out.
And I think comedians are a great example as well of the 10,000 hours, because they will go out there in smaller events and they will crack all the terrible jokes, even with papers in front of them. And they will probably be reading the joke out loud. Okay, it doesn't hit, then it's marked as a let's not do this again. Yeah. Something that hits, okay, they like this, let's work on this. And then they take the good material and they go on the big shows, and that's what they're known for.
Yeah.
But they also have to go through the bad feedback.
Yep. I do think one thing I'm slightly, I guess, it's not jealousy, but I feel like that's lucky, is that comedians / musicians get to repeat their content. Like, you make something and then you're like, I'm just going to go and say this again. Comedians not so lucky, because once they've done an area, you can't come back and be like, hey, same fans, you want to hear those same jokes again? That's why they have to take a hiatus. But being able to do that, whereas in this one, at least in this venture, once we've said this, what am I going to go do? Hey, do you want to hear that exact episode? We revised it. Let's do the exact typo. But I think, yeah, it's so true. It is, and they are like very well known, very obvious examples of people who are having to work through their passion, work through it. If you catch them in a smaller venue, they'll still make you laugh, but they will try out new things. And there's comedians who work that into their act, where you can see them with the physical piece of paper and they'll be like, I guess one didn't hit, and then they'll feed it in. And I think that is like respected, appreciated, and it's something that's clearly useful there, and it's also useful in other ventures. It's just that it might not be as obvious to the public. It's something that you yourself have to go knowing that, hey, I could bomb at this, I could do bad, but I'm also driven to make sure that I will continuously get to the point where I'm good at this. I will maintain and be one of those people who make it to, let's say, 100 episodes if it's a podcast, or not just a number in 21 million, but an active participant, someone who people can talk to about. So I think that's a key differentiator.
Absolutely. But we hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope that we found some relevance. I know that this has been our story from getting from nowhere, I guess, to building something. I guess putting in the hours towards the 10,000. I don't think we're anywhere close to the 10,000, but we're getting there. And also, I guess our mental struggles on keeping this going when there isn't an awful lot that comes back. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's what you have to do when you're trying to aspire to something bigger than you. But I've been Valerio, one of the hosts in this episode, joined by Mark, real life.
Yeah, Mark in real life.
In real life.
That's what I'm calling myself when we do it in person, Mark in real life. Yeah.
As always, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube on @the.needlemovers, or you can find us on the website, www.theneedlemovers.xyz.
I think I'm laughing because I always heard him say www, but this is the first time.
I thought about this very carefully. 3 W's.
Then now they'll find our website. It's great. But yeah, and wherever you get podcasts, so iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever, TuneIn Radio. You can find us there. We're The Needle Movers. We were previously called Book Club, but I'm trying to remove that from... If you see it anywhere, tell me, because I've been removing that from everywhere. Feel free, give us a rating and some feedback.
And subscribe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Do that.
Subscribe on our mailing list. We'll be starting to send some content out, which is going to be exclusive. So feel free, as you say, to give us that 5-star review, but also make sure you subscribe.
Damn right. Yeah.
As always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Until next time.
Adios.